Okay, so we are Be'ezrat Hashem today doing Daf Ayin Bet Amud Bet. We're holding on Daf Ayin Bet Amud Aleph. So says the Gemara all the way on the bottom. It says Lema Ketenai. So before we were discussing a Mashuch, someone who's Moshech his Orla, his Orla is pulled down and therefore it looks like he's not Mahul. So we discussed, does he need a Brit Milah Deoraita Midirabanan? So the Gemara brings a machlok. The Gemara wants to suggest is a machlok at Tanaim. Mashuch v'ger shenitgayer kshu mahul. Okay, so someone who's a mashuch or a ger that converted who already had a milah. V'katan she'avar zmano, and also a katan that he passed his zman for the brit milah, meaning he's older than 8 days old. V'shar kol animulim, and anyone else who needs to have a milah la'atuye mi sheyesh lo shtei orlot, including someone who has 2 orlot that he needs a milah to remove the second orla. Enan nimolin ella bayom. They can only have milah during the day. Nighttime is pasul for milah. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, bizmano en nimolin ella bayom. Shelo bizmano nimolin bayom valayla. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says if it's a milah shelo bizmana, then you can do it at nighttime. So you have a machloket whether milah Shelo bizmana in these situations can be done at night, or does it only need to be done during the day? So the Gemara suggests that the machloket over here is whether a mashuch requires milah deoraita or not. How? So the Gemara says, "My love behakam epalgi." Don't we say that this is what they're arguing about? The marstav or mashuch deoraita, the opinion that says that he has to get milah during the day. He holds that mashuch is deoraita, and that's why the pasuk says uvayom hashemini, it has to be only during the daytime. Umar savar mashuch derabanan. Another opinion who allows at nighttime, he says mashuch is derabanan, therefore you could do it at nighttime as well. So Gemara says that does not make sense. V'tizbara, does that make sense? Katan she'avar zmano. What else was on the list? A katan who's older than 8 days old. Mi'ika leman damar derabanan. They still have the same machloket, and nobody holds a boy who's over 8 days old requires milah only derabanan. Everyone agrees that's deoraita. Ela dekuli alma mashuch derabanan v'katan shavar zmano deoraita. Everybody has to agree. Everybody could agree that a mashuch is derabanan, and everyone has to agree that a child who's over 8 days old requires milah deoraita. So what's the machloket over here? V'hacha b'haka mipalgi. They're arguing about this. The mar savar darshin uvayom, mar savar lo darshin uvayom. The question is, do you make a drasha of uvayom hashemini, the extra vav of uvayom, to teach me only during the daytime, even by milah shelo bizmana? That's the drasha. Ki adi yativ Rabbi Yochanan v'kadarish. Rabbi Yochanan one time was sitting and he was making the following drasha. Notar, you have notar, a leftover of a korban that needs to be burned. So bizmano, if it's at its time, meaning it's the day after the korban was supposed to be eaten. So enon nisraf ela bayom, has to be burned during the day. Shelo bizmano, if it's notar shelo bizmano, if it's beyond that, it's a few days later. So nisraf ben bayom ben balayla, could be burned in the day or at night. So the Gemara says ve'etve Rabbi Lazar le Rabbi Yochanan. So that's Rabbi Yochanan's halacha. He said that notar could be burned only during the day if it's bizmano, if it's at the right time. But if it's shelo bizmano, day or night. Ve'et Rabbi Lazar le Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Lazar asked Rabbi Yochanan, he said, "En li ela nimol lishmini, she'en nimol ela bayom. Minayin l'rabot letish'a la'asara la'achad asar l'shnei masar." That by milah, how do I know that someone who's having a milah shelo bizmana, they're older than 8 days old? How do I know that they also have to have milah during the day? Talmud lomar uvayom. We learn from the word uvayom that even shelo bizmana, milah needs to be during the day. Even according to the opinion that doesn't make a drasha of vav of uvayom, vav vehe darish. By notar, they'll still make a drasha because the pasuk says vehan notar. There's an extra vav and he in that pasuk. Therefore, they would make a drasha that even notar shelo bizmano would be during the day or during the night. But what's the point? The point that we're bringing this for is to show that we have this drasha of uvayom, and we want to say that is the machloket. So either way, the Gemara continues the story, meaning according to the opinion that says Rabbi Elazar in the original Braita that says that Milah Shel Bizmana is during the day or during the night. He didn't hold of this drasha. Tanakama held of this drasha of Uvayom, the extra vav, to teach me that even Milah Shel Bizmana is only during the day. And the Gemara continues with the story here. So Ishtik. So when Rabbi Yochanan heard this, he didn't know what to respond. He was quiet. He didn't know what to respond. Batar did nafi, because Rabbi Yochanan was saying his halacha about notar, and it seems to be that it was disproven. Right? Rabbi Elazar asked a good question. So Batar did nafik, after Rabbi Elazar left, Amar le Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan turned to Reish Lakish and he said, Ra'iti leben pedat sheyoshev v'doresh k'Moshe mipia gvura. He says, I see Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat, he's darshaning very well. He had this drasha that knocked out my halacha. Amar le Reish Lakish, didehi matnita. Reish Lakish told Rabbi Yochanan, it's not his own drasha, it's a matnita, it's a braita. Hecha tanale. So where is it? Betorat Kohanim. It's in Torat Kohanim. So Nafak, so Rabbi Yochanan went out. Tanya betlata yome. He learned it in 3 days. He reviewed it in 3 days. Vesavra b'lhada yarchen. He learned it in depth in 3 months. Okay. Amar Rabbi Elazar. So new topic. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Arel shehiza hazaatok shera. An arel that he did the sprinkling of the efer para aduma. His haza'ah is keshera. That's a kosher sprinkling. Midi dehava atvul yom. Sha'af al pi sha'asur b'truma kasher b'para. Just like a tvul yom. A tvul yom is somebody who went to the mikveh on that day, but he did not yet have nightfall, right? There's different stages in becoming tahor. So number 1, he goes to the mikveh. Number 2, he has to wait till nightfall. Number 3, he has to bring a korban the next morning. So those 3 stages, depending on what type of tumah a person contracted, he may have to go through all 3 stages in order to become tahor for different things. So if a tavul yom, when he goes to the mikveh, but he has not yet waited until nightfall, he's allowed to deal with the ashes of the paraduma, but he's not allowed to eat truma. So you see that a tavul yom, even though he's not allowed to eat truma, he's kasher to deal with the ashes of the paraduma. So an arel also, even though he's not allowed to eat truma, he could deal with the ashes of the paraduma. So Gemara says, "Ma tvul yom sheken mutar b'maaser." The Gemara says, yeah, but tvul yom is different because he's mutar b'maaser. In arel, we're gonna talk about actually the next daf whether the arel is mutar b'maaser or not. But the assumption is that arel may not be mutar to have maaser. So Gemara says, "Atu anan la'achila ka'amrinan." We're not talking about eating. We don't care what they can eat or not eat. Anan l'negiya ka'amrinan. We're talking about touching the whole time. When it comes to the ashes of the paraduma, we're not talking about eating it. We're talking about touching it, sprinkling it. So all we care about is whether he can touch other things. So it's like this: Uma tivul yom she'asur b'negiya de truma. A tivul yom cannot even touch truma. Mutar bepara, but he's allowed to touch the ashes of the paraduma. Arel shemutar b'negiya, an arel who's allowed to touch truma. So eno din shemutar b'para. Of course, he should be able to touch paraduma. So we have a kal v'chomer from a tevul yom to an arel, that an arel should be allowed to touch and mix and sprinkle the ashes of the paraduma. So Tani Nami Hachi, we have a braita also. It says arel shehiza hazaatok shera, that if an arel sprinkled paraduma efer para on somebody to be mitaher him, that's kasher. Umaaseh hayav hichshiru chachamim hazaato, and there was actually a case and chachamim were machshirid, and they said that the hazaa was a good hazaa. Meiteve. The Gemara brings a braita against what we're saying right now. We're saying that an arel can deal with the ashes of paraduma. The Gemara says meiteve. Tumtum shekidesh kidusho pasul. A tumtum that he was mekadesh the efer para, which means he took the ashes of the paraduma and he mixed it into the water. So if he did that, it's pasul. Mimneshu safek arel. Why? Because it's safek arel. So what do you see? Arel pasul kadesh, and arel is pasul kadesh. Right? So what do you see from here? You see that an arel cannot touch the water of the ashes of the paraduma. Okay, let's continue with the braita. Androgenos shekidesh, and you have an androgenos, who that's someone who has both an ever, a male and female ever. So, and he has a milah on the male side. So androgenos shekidesh kidushav kasher. If he does it, is kasher. Why? because if he's a female, it's kasher, and if it's a male, he has a brit milah, so he's not an arel, so it's kasher. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Af androgynos shekidesh kiddusha pasulim. But Rabbi Yehuda argues. He says that no, androgynos also is pasul. Why? Mimnei shesafek isha veisha pasulam milkadesh. Because he holds that a female is pasul to be mekadesh the efer para. Either way, what's the point that we brought this braita for? Katani miha arel v'safek arel pasul milkadesh. It says that an arel is not allowed to be mekadesh the efer para. He's not allowed to mix the water of the para aduma together with the ashes. So what do you see? You see that he can't deal with the paraduma. We were saying before that an arel can. We brought a kal v'chomer from Tivul Yom that an arel could do it. So over here we're saying that an arel cannot. So Amar Rav Yosef, Haitana, Tana de Rabbi Akiva, who this braita is going like Rabbi Akiva. The marbele arel ketameh. Rabbi Akiva's shita is, which we had earlier. Rabbi Akiva's shita is that he holds an arel is included in the pasuk talking about a tameh, and therefore an arel has the status of a tameh. So whatever a tameh cannot do, an arel cannot do. The Tani Rabbi Akiva Omer ish l'rabot ha'arel. The pasuk says ish, and it's talking about a tameh, but it says a second time ish l'rabot ha'arel to include arel. Amar Rava. Havayativna kameh de Rav Yosef. So Rava says one time I was standing in front of Rav Yosef. V'kashali, and I had the following question: Lo lishtamit tana velidni ha'arel v'hatameh. Oh, okay, tov. Lo lishtamit tana velidni ha'arel v'hatameh. How come we don't ever have the any mishnah anywhere saying arel and tameh like Rabbi Akiva, meaning v'lema Rabbi Akiva he, and it'll be going according to Rabbi Akiva that an arel is like a tameh. So I'm going to explain what we're here in a moment. Velo, what do you mean? We don't have? We do have. V'akatani ha'arel v'hatameh piturim min ha'riyah. We have a braita that says an arel and a tameh are piturim from riyah, from being seen at the on the regalim olat riyah, bring a korban olah. So they don't go for that. So hata mishum demais. That's not because an arel has a status of a tameh. That's because an arel is ma'us and he can't come for the olat riyah. Vazdu leta'amayhu. And the original machloket that we had in this braita that we just brought between Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim, whether an androgynous, who is a suffix male, suffix female, whether that suffix female, whether that makes it that she cannot bring not deal with the efer para. Azul leta'amayhu. They're going according to their own reasoning. We are by Ayin Bet Amud Bet all the way on towards the bottom, maybe like 10 lines up from the bottom. First word on the line is Leta'amayhu, and then it says Detanya. Azul Leta'amayhu, and then Detanya. So Hakol Kshirim Lekadesh Chutz Micheresh Shote Vekatan. Everyone is kasher to be mekadesh, to mix the ashes of the para duma together with the water, except for a cheresh, a shoteh, and a katan. So someone who is cheresh is someone who's deaf mute, shoteh is someone who is out of their mind, and katan is someone who's under bar mitzvah. They're not allowed to deal with the ashes of the para duma and mix it together with the water. Rabbi Yehuda machshir bekatan. Rabbi Yehuda allows a katan to deal with the water of the paraduma and the ashes. That he says is mutar, it's kasher. Uposel be'isha, but he says that an isha is not allowed to. Uva androgynos. She's not allowed to deal with the ashes and water of the paraduma. She's not. There's an avoda when it comes to the preparing the ashes of the paraduma. Part of what's done is kiddush. Which means not like Kiddush on Shabbat. It means you're mixing the ashes with the water. You're pouring the ashes into it. No? Not that part. No. Some parts only Kohanim could do. Some parts are not specific for, or it could be, I'm sorry. Some parts are only Kohanim could do. I don't know if only Kohanim could do this part, but either way, it doesn't matter. We're talking about people who are Kohanim. If it is only for Kohanim, then we're talking about a katan, cheresh, shoteh, katan,
why
isha.
Why is there a meaning that a woman might be involved if it's Kohanim?
It's not like a part of the avoda. So either way, so My ta'amad Rabbanan. What's the reason of Rabbanan that they would allow? What's it called? They would allow a. They only don't allow cher shotev katan, but they allow an isha. Tichtiv v'lakechu latameh me'afar serefat hachatat. So it says v'lakechu latameh. They take for the tameh from the ashes of this paraduma. So hanach de pesili ba'asifa pesulin bekidush. So it says, the pasuk continues. The whole pasuk says v'lakechu latameh me'afar serefat hachatat v'natan alav al maim. Or what is it? V'natan alav maim chayim el keli. Right. So they take the ashes and they put water on it. So it says lakechu, they take the ashes. So we're saying the same people who are kasher and pasul with when it comes to gathering, collecting the ashes and taking them, are gonna be pasul for pouring the water on them. So we know from elsewhere that cheresh, shoteh, and katan are not allowed to take the ashes, but a lady can. So those same people are not allowed to put water on the ashes. But a lady could, according to Chachamim, right? So hanach de kesherin ba'asifa kesherin bekidush. Those who are kasher for gathering the ashes are kasher for putting water on them. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Amar Lecha. Rabbi Yehuda will tell you like this: Imken nema kira velakach. If so, the pasuk should have just said velakach. Mai velakechu. Why? How come it says velakechu? De'afilu hanach de pesulin hatam kesherim hacha. That even those who are pasul for the gathering are kasher for the taking the ashes and putting water on them, right? Because there's one pasuk that says, right, we have to really see the whole picture here. There's one pasuk that says v'asaf ish tahor, that someone has to gather the ashes of the paraduma, and in that pasuk we have a lot of drashos. The ish and not a katan, tahor and not a this. That we make drasha through the pasuk. So we have a list of people who are pasul and a list of people who are kasher. Now, female is kasher to gather, but a cher shotev katan are pisulim. So Chachamim said, okay, well it says lakechu letameh. So the same people that were pisulim there are pisulim here. The same people that are kasherim there are kasherim here, by the putting the water on. Rabbi Yehuda says that's not true. Why? Because he says imken nemakra velakach. The pasuk should have just said velakach. My velakechu. Why does it say velakechu in plural? Da'afilu hanach de pisulin hatam. It's more inclusive. Even the ones that were pasul in the previous pasuk for the previous job having to do with the paraduma, kesherim hacha. They're kasher here because over here it says lakechu, which is plural, which is more inclusive, which is coming to include more people that were pasul over there. They could still take over here. That's his drasha. So the Gemara challenges that and says, Ihachi ishanami. If that's the case, then a woman also should be allowed. Why are you telling me that a woman is not allowed? If you're telling me that lakechu is more inclusive, so a woman should be included as well. I mean, there was no reason to not include her. So the Gemara says, Venatan velo venatna. The pasuk says, Venatan alav mayim chayim, and not natna. So it's not or natnu. It's not an inclusive term. The word venatan, the Gemara seems to be saying it should have said venatanu alav. The same people who were allowed to gather, they can collect and they could put the water on it. Right? There's three different actions mentioned. One is asifa, collecting, gathering, asaf ishtahor in the pasuk. Then another one is velakechu letameh. They take the ashes in a kli, and then natan alav, they pour water on it. So the last one, it should have stayed consistent with the previous one. It says velakechu in plural.
The first person who does it has to be tahor.
Yes, there's.
So how are they ever going to do it then?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a separate thing. Okay, what?
We use a robot or something.
No, he says Venatan. It can't be a robot. Venatan v'lo natna. So it says Venatan, and it's not something that's plural or including female. So v'Rabbanan. What are the Rabbanan answer to that? Iktiv v'lakach v'natan. If it would have said both in singular, that wouldn't have worked. Hava amina shakil chad v'yahiv chad. I would have thought that specifically one person has to take the ashes and one person has to pour the water. That can't be done with more than one person. So ktiv rachmana v'lakechu. Therefore, the Torah says v'lakechu to show that multiple people could do it together. Ikad rachmana v'lakechu v'natenu. If the Torah would have said lakechu v'natenu, all in plural, havamina deshak litre v'yahiv tre. I would have thought that multiple people have to take and have to pour water on it. That it needs one person cannot do it. So katav rachmana v'lakechu v'natan. That's why it has to be inconsistent to teach me that the afilu shakli tre v'yahiv chad. It doesn't matter. Two people could take it and one person could pour it. We're not makpid on the amount of people doing it. So that's why it needs to be that lakechu is tameh and natan is singular. But Rabbi Yehuda is learning natan is singular to exclude a female. So that is that machlokah. We'll just read one more line. Vehizah hatahor al hatameh. So there's another pasuk. The pasuk says hizah hatahor al hatameh. The tahor sprinkles the water on the tameh. Now it doesn't need to say. It could have just said vehizah al hatameh. He sprinkles on the tameh. Obviously, the person who's sprinkling is tahor. Why does it have to say hizah hatahor? It sounds like it's making a point to say that, like, we're calling him tahor with regards to this, but maybe he's not fully tahor. With regards to dealing with the paraduma, but maybe there are some things that he cannot do. There are different stages. We were explaining before. There's different stages of becoming tahor.
Meaning he doesn't have tumat made.
No, there are different stages of becoming tahor. Well, he doesn't have tumat made, but there's also the fact that it says hatahor seems to indicate that he's not really fully tahor. The different stages of becoming tahor, depending on what type of tumah someone contracted.
If someone uses the word tahor, it means they're not fully tahor.
In the context of this pasuk, it did not need to say tahor. So the fact that the Torah is saying tahor seems to indicate even someone who's, if it would have said nothing, I would have assumed that it has to be someone who's fully 100% tahor. The fact that it says something seems to indicate that, with regard to this, being a certain level of tahor is tahor enough. So there are different levels of tahora. When a person goes to the mikveh, but it has not yet reached nightfall, he's not fully tahor. He's tahor for some things, but he's not fully tahor. For example, he can't eat truma. He can't eat kochim, but he's tahor with regard to other things. So, tahor michlal shu tameh. The fact that it says tahor sounds like we're dealing with somebody who is also somewhat tameh, because otherwise we shouldn't have mentioned anything. So limed al tivul yom shekasher bepara. So this comes to teach me regarding a tivul yom that a tivul yom is kasher to deal with the para aduma. Okay, so the next Gemara is a different thing. It goes on. We'll stop here.